So the title of this article is The Story of Atomism and Baal. Super crazy, I know, but the tangent from the topic that I talked about in the last video about spirit and things like that, it has brought me to a whole different part of knowledge, I guess. So, you know, all the things that they teach us in school about how atoms are matter and they create everything and they're so small we cannot see them, but they can't be divided, and gravity and the other laws of nature, they're the ones that are making everything go and upholding everything, and they really just do not give credit or any due to God at all. They do not look at him as the creator. They do not appreciate his design, his handiwork that he's done. We're supposed to admire the things that he's created, like the sun and the moon and the stars and the grass and the trees and the fruits and the animals, but we're not supposed to worship them. We're not supposed to lift them up as if they are the creators of everything, because that is the definition of idolatry, when you're putting something before God, when you are looking to something else as God rather than he who is God. It's called idolatry, and it's rebellion against God and his word. So when he speaks about things like that, he often speaks about that these people were doing witchcrafts. He often brings that up, and I've talked about this many times, and I'm going to keep bringing it up because it keeps coming up. And if I didn't see it, I wouldn't bring it up. And I pointed out every single time that the serpent, the Nakash, is in every civilization, every form of idolatry, every form of rebellion, every form of people elevating themselves above God. All this stems from serpent knowledge. The thought that by knowing good and evil, you are like man. You are like God. By eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you can be like God. And you see this preached throughout, and you see it preached throughout atheism, and you hear it preached throughout, Satanism. I mean, there's so many different avenues that you can go, and they're all going to have some form of looking to yourself or looking to another God as the Savior. So again, when we learn these things in school, to be honest, I never believed half the things that I learned. Math was cool, chemistry was cool, and I love science. I love sciences, all kinds of science. Even I'm not that good in geography. I didn't like coloring maps in school, but you can just see it. I never believed in evolution. Never, even in school. I'm like, I'm just going to learn this so that I can pass this class, so that I can graduate and get the heck up out of here. So you say what now? That all of these things come from okay. Let me remember what it is y'all believe, because I definitely don't believe that. I believe God created the world 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. I believe that God is a spirit, so we cannot see him with the naked eye, but we definitely can see his power by the way that things are being upheld. If they believe in Jupiter and Saturn and all these planets, and the sun, and the moon that we see, and they're just up there, something's got to hold that up. And they'll attribute it to, matter of fact, I don't know why they think that those things are up in the air. Because even if you say that, okay, the centrifugal force is holding it up there, which I don't even know if they believe, because I think they only believe that the planets themselves are what's moving, and their mass is keeping them, at their respective distances, and I guess holding them into play. I don't really know, but that's no explanation for the sun to just be hanging up there in the sky. What reason is that? Because according to them, the sun is standing still. And it's we who revolve around the sun. That's what they tell us. But I see the sun moving in the sky. That's a different topic for a different day. But the fact of the matter is, it's God who upholds these things. And he's the creator of these things. And he has the mind to do it. He had to have the wisdom and the knowledge to put it all together. You can't just get the sun burning and rising and setting for as long as we've all known, like clockwork. You don't get that without having some thought into it about how this whole thing was going to go, how this thing was going to be fueled, how it was going to, again, hang up there. All these things had to be thought out in the mind, because you've never said anything, you never written anything, you never created anything without first thinking about it. So it comes to mind, and then boom, you do it, or you say it. So to be able to do that takes some type of power. Has to be a decision, for sure, in order for you to create something, for it to transfer from the mind, and actually make it happen. It takes a lot of power. And again, the word spirit means mind, breath, wind, spirit. That's what it all means. So I'm going to get into this. Again, it's called The Story of Atomism and Baal, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. And the king shall do according to his will, and shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God who his fathers knew not shall he honor, with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Daniel 11:35-38. In the 18th and 19th century, before the predominance of materialism, the mechanistic theory for the origin of life circulated through philosophical coteries. Adherents believed that future events could be determined by knowing the sequence of events preceding it. Moreover, that existence is based on purely physical and chemical processes, unseen elemental articles manifesting the forces of nature by vibrating and interacting with one another to make what is seen. The elemental particles and the relationship between them could be used to determine the sequence of events needed to produce a particular event, more specifically, life. Since matter was the only thing proven to exist, mechanism rejected anything unobservable that could not be tested with the mathematical method, so contending theories on spirit-body dualism were dismissed. The concept of energy emerged from the opposing theory, Vitalism, which states that the beginning of life results from a vital principle emanating from the sun and functions apart from purely chemical and physical processes. It felt that living organisms were fundamentally different from non-living entities because they contain this non-physical element, and it governed by different principles than inanimate things. Furthermore, inorganic molecules could not produce living organisms, but instead, life could only be produced from another living organism, a distinct spirit that gives them life. Chinese philosophers called this life giver qi, meaning air or breath, which emanated from the great ultimate. Franz Mesmer originally used the word animus or anima to describe the ideas of breath, which belong to man and animals. And it's referred to prana in Eastern tradition. Albert Pike in Mores and Dogmas writes, to Aboriginal people, the sun was the innate fire of bodies, the fire of nature, author of life. Heat, ignition, efficient cause of all generations, for without him there was no movement, no exercise, no form, indivisible, imperishable, present everywhere. This energy brought along with it the science of charge, electromagnetism, which postulates that there's a positive and negative electronic field that exerts force on other charges, either repelling or attracting them. It was believed that all objects had an energy field, called an aura, which enclosed it. And it is the word the Greeks and Latins used as wind, breath, or breeze. Although they accept the fact that this life force is attributed to the wind and breath, as the word of God says is the case, they give this glory to the sun. On the other hand, to a mechanist, energy is the capacity for doing work. All matter, anything that occupies space and has mass and can be seen, was said to have energy, so that matter and energy are identical. Pierre Simon, Marquis de Laplace, published a philosophical essay on probabilities, an articulation of causal determinism, where he postulated, we may regard the present state of the universe as its effect of its past and the cause of its future. An intellect which is at a certain moment would know all the forces that set nature in motion, and all positions and all items which nature is composed. If this intellect were also vast enough to submit this data to analysis, it would embrace in a single formula the movements of the greatest bodies of the universe and those of the tiniest atom. For such an intellect, nothing would be uncertain, and the future, just like the past, would be present before its eyes. This work was dubbed as Laplace's demon. The demon was interchangeable with intellect. Thus, quantum mechanics is the study of how everything works in nature according to how the particles and forces interact. It applied to every force of life except growth, reproduction, heredity, and voluntary acts. It mimicked the deterministic theory, which stated that all events, even moral choices, were completely determined by what came previously, so that humans did not have the free will and could not act otherwise than they do. This belief, however, has deep-seated roots in the occult mystery schools of ancient Babylon that remain prevalent today, even under the guise of the Catholic Church. Pioneers of mechanism derived theories from atomism, the belief that material world is made of atoms, minute particles invisible to the eye due to their size. Pierre Gastin's atomic theory revived Epicureanism, named for the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus, a self-proclaimed sage, a virtuous person said to have attained wisdom, and empiricist, who believed the senses are the only reliable source of knowledge. He believed that the universe was by chance, with no God ruling over it, and the greatest pleasure was the absence of pain. The New Testament mentions the Epicureans in Acts 17:17. The certain philosophers of the Epicureans and the Stoics brought Paul to Areopagus. Areopagus is a prominent rock in northwest Acropolis in Athens, Greece. In classic times, it was a court for trying cases on homicide, wounding, and religious matters. Epicurus was influenced by the Greek philosopher Pyrrho, who espoused that the main goal of life was to attain eudaimonium, a word derived from the nouns eu, good and well, and daimon, spirit, referring to a deity or guardian spirit. It applies being similar to a benevolent deity or looked after by one. One way this is attained is through ataraxia. Lucid state of equanimity whereby a person's composure is undisturbed by the emotions or pain or anything causing instability in the mind. In Pyrrhonism, this is done by epoche or suspending one's judgment. Sextus Epicurus writes, state of the intellect on account of which we neither deny or affirm anything. His other influence and teacher was Democritus. He believed the universe to be infinite and eternal, and occurrences are the result of atoms interacting and moving in empty space. However, the atoms could deviate from their expected course, giving free will to humans in a deterministic worldview. Democritus believed in the soul, but that too was material and composed of atoms, spiritual soul atoms to be exact, carried by the wind, which intrude the soul, and as they vibrate, produce a particular sensation and give life due to them being a fiery nature. Therefore, pleasure was the greatest good. Now, this thought was said to derive from the Hellenistic philosophy, Hellen meaning Greek-like, as describing Greek civilization. In Greek mythology, Hellen, the son of Deucalion, was the son of Prometheus, the thief of fire, and his wife Pyrrha. Deucalion and his wife were the only two to survive the worldwide flood that lasted 9 days, according to this account. After the flood, they asked the oracle of Themis, god of good counsel, divine order, fairness, natural law and custom, how to repopulate the earth, being told to throw the bones of their mother behind their shoulders. Mother was interpreted as Gaia, and bones as stones. These stones turned into people. Now Pyrrha, the nymph or nature deity, had a father named Epimetheus, the afterthinker, depicted as foolish, and a mother, Pandora. The name Pandora means one who sends gifts up from below, the all-giving. Epimetheus was supposed to give a positive trait to every animal, but ran out and decided to give mankind arts and fire, which his brother Prometheus stole from Athena and Hephaestus. This essentially meant thought follows production, which is the fruit of materialism. James 1:17 in contrast states, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. About Pandora, Hesiod poem writes, after humans received stolen gift of fire from Prometheus, Zeus gave humanity a punishing gift as a compensation. He commands Hephaestus, the blacksmith, to mold from the earth a woman, a beautiful evil, whose descendants would torment the human race. This woman was thought to be Pandora. From her, a race of women and female kind would be created, a deadly race of women who will live amongst mortal men and are helpmeet not in poverty but in wealth. Those who try to avoid evil women by avoiding marriage will do no better. Although most attribute the atomic theory to Democritus and Leucippus, before them was Moloch of Sidon, a learned man of Phoenicia, taught by the Chaldeans and initiated into the ancient mysteries. The Chaldeans, who lived in the lower Euphrates and Tigris, were considered the wisest in the land. They were professional astrologers, speaking of those who divide the heavens and take the horoscope by distinguishing the signs of the zodiac. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, as an error which proceeds from the ruler. Ecclesiastes 10:5. Before Nimrod, mankind was governed with the man as the head of the household. He heard from God and gave instruction to his family. The word Nimrod is Hebrew for rebellion. He established ancient Babylon in the land of Shinar. Josephus writes, "Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. Nimrod led a rebellion against God at the Tower of Babel. He sought to avenge the world of God because God had brought about the great flood that destroyed their forefathers. He set himself to be worshipped as God and used sorceries and fire rituals to gain victories. This fire was worshipped by the Phoenicians as the ancient symbol of the sun and the sacred energy force found in man and animals. It was also incorporated into the idols found in different parts of the world. Baal and Moloch in Phoenicia, Hephaestus in Greek, Vulcan in Roman, and the Cretes worshipped serpents." After the death of Nimrod, Semiramis' wife reported Nimrod was a god. People began worshiping him as God, attributing the sun to him. Semiramis became known as the Queen of Heaven, symbolized by the moon. The Bible records the Chaldeans in Babylon worshiping a god named Baal, whom human sacrifices were made to. According to the mysteries, only revealed to a few, Nimrod is Baal, the king, light bringer to mankind to show them good and evil. Hence Lucifer, the serpent, was worshipped in the mysteries and transformed into an angel of light. This was the mystery, that Satan was praised in secret as God. It involved deep symbolism that reenacted Nimrod's death, rise, and deification. The elevation of the sun and moon were the beginning of the host of heaven being worshipped, which the Bible forbids. Other rituals involved weeping for Nimrod. As the story would have it, Semiramis finds out she's pregnant after the death of Nimrod. The child she birthed and later marries, Tammuz, she believed was the reincarnation of her dead husband. Ezekiel 8:14 states that women were seen weeping for Tammuz. However, it was to the god Moloch, which the people of the land would make their sons and daughters pass through the fire to. Matter of fact, this bronze statue was erected with the body of a man and the head of a bull and the furnace in its belly. People would place their babies on the outstretched arms and burn their children alive as a sacrificial offering. And they have high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of Hinnom, to burn their sons and daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not, neither came it into my heart. Jeremiah 7:13. And the houses of Jerusalem and the houses of the kings of Judah shall be defiled as the place of Tophet, because of all the house upon whose roofs they have burned incense unto all the host of heaven, and have poured out drink offerings unto other gods. Jeremiah 19:13. To be continued.